Hey guys, welcome back to my kitchen. Since it's starting to get nice outside and we're going to be getting into spring, we're going to start cooking a little bit lighter. And so today what we're going to do is a homemade pesto with pasta. So when we're making pesto, I know that some of you have seen pesto recipes, and one of the big ingredients in pesto is cheese. Of course, this is no dairy, no problem, so we're not going to have any cheese in this recipe. In place of cheese, we're going to use nutritional yeast flakes. I know it sounds weird, like why are you putting yeast in stuff? But the nutritional yeast flakes are a man-made yeast that resembles the taste of cheese. And so that's what we're going to be using in today's recipe. So we're going to be doing a standard basil pesto with a little bit of spinach added. Because I like the baby spinach added into my pesto sauce. So to start us out, we've got about 3 cups of basil. Now you want fresh basil, and when you are putting it in here, before you get it all in your food processor or your blender, you want to make sure that you're taking the stems off. The stems can be bitter and they're really hard to grind up, and so you want to remove those, and you can use them in other recipes if you want. And then I only have about a half a handful of baby spinach leaves in here. Not very much spinach at all, just enough to change the flavor a little bit. And so we have that in here already. To this, we're going to add about 3 to 4 tablespoons of pine nuts. We're going to add our nutritional yeast flakes, and this is going to be about 3 tablespoons of yeast flakes. So I like a lot of garlic. We're going to add 4 cloves of garlic to this. And then we are also going to add about 2 tablespoons of lemon to give it a little bit of zing. And then just a pinch of salt to them. Okay, so now we're not going to add any liquid to this yet other than the lemon. And let's go ahead and put our lid on here. And we're going to turn it on, and we are going to start blending. It's loud, right guys? Okay. So as this is blending, you want to slowly add your oil. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're going to push some of the stuff down, because if you can tell, it kind of went up on the sides. Normally you would use a food processor for something like this. However, my food processor doesn't have the option to add anything to it while it's running. So we're using the blender instead. And we're just going to grab a spatula out of here somewhere. So many things in my drawer there, guys. And we're going to push all this down to the bottom so that it can mix in with everything else that is in there. And good. We've got that down there. You kind of scrape your spatula on your blades on the inside. That ensures that you get everything off of your spatula and that you're not losing anything in the process. All right. And so we're going to put the lid back on here. We're going to give this another good mix. When you're putting your oil in, you don't want it to be super oily. So you actually only want to have a few tablespoons of oil. And then you can add some water to give it more of a runnier consistency if that's what you want. Just to the thickness that you want, just depending on what you're going to use it for. Today we're going to use it for pasta. We're going to toss some pasta in with the pesto. And so it's going to be kind of thick. We want it to stick to those noodles. Okay guys, so now let's go ahead and keep blending, and we're going to add a little bit of water to this. All right guys, from the outside it appears like this is what we want. Let's get it in a bowl and take a look. All right guys, so we said that we want this to be pourable but still thick because we want it to stick to the noodles. And so we can see that it's running down here, and we've got that nice thick consistency, but it's still pourable. We're just gonna scrape it out. There you have it guys. Here is our fresh pesto. for our pasta. Isn't that gorgeous? So now, let's go make some pasta. All right guys, so now we're over here at the mixer and we're going to be making pasta. This is going to be a little bit different from when we were making our homemade country noodles, because with this, I don't really measure. With the noodles, you notice that we did measure things, and we're going to be using the stand mixer instead of doing everything by hand, so it's going to be a little bit different on this one. Okay, so for my pasta, when I'm making pasta, I use AP flour or all-purpose flour. Now, a lot of people will use a more glutinous flour because the more gluten you have when you're making a pasta or a noodle, the chewier it's going to be. That's why when you're eating something like an Asian noodle, like a soba, it's got that really chewy texture because they use a high glutinous flour when they're making it. Myself, I like kind of in between, so I'm going to use an all-purpose flour. In my flour container, I keep this little scoop, and so we are going to do about one of these scoops to one egg. So we're going to stick these in here. We're going to go ahead and make a well in the flour inside the mixing bowl. And then I already have 2 eggs here whisked up, and I'm going to add those and put them in that well that I made. And so now, with our dough hook, we are just going to mix this. Alright, and so now we're just going to mix this together. You may need to start incorporating flour from the outside. So I realized that I was not filming when I started this. So we missed the first part of it. But we're using our stand mixer with our hook. And we're just getting that, we want a nice round ball of pasta. So we are going to let this go here for a little bit. Alright, so now we have one ball of pasta. And it's still going to be a little bit sticky, and you want that. You're going to kind of get rid of that on the counter. So let's go ahead and take this bowl of pasta dough over and get the pasta roller out. So we are back over here at our regular workbench, and as you can see, we've got our pasta dough, we've got our surface floured, and we have our pasta roller. And so let's get started with making the actual pasta. The first thing that you're going to want to do is you want to kind of flatten this out a little bit. We want to get some flour around the outside of the dough, and we're going to take it off in a few different pieces here. And so we're going to start with a ball about this size. You want to kind of flatten it out. Make sure that you've got flour on both sides of it, but brush your excess flour off before you put it through the roller. Alright guys, so we're over here at the pasta roller. Before you start rolling your pasta, you want to make sure that you have it on the biggest setting, on the largest setting there, because it is a bit of a process to roll your pasta out. So we're going to start with this first sheet, and as this comes out, we are going to fold this, and then we're going to put some more flour on the outside of it, just like we did before, brushing off the outside, because we don't want the pasta gumming up in the pasta roller. That is the last thing we want. Right, and we're going to fold this again, and again, make sure that you've got just a dusting of flour on the outside. And we're going to send this through again. This. Okay, and I'm going to send this through again. All right, and we're going to be good with that one. So there is our first sheet of our first roll through. We're going to roll through several times because we want to get this down to a level 5. And so now we're gonna go with our next one. And all right, and let's go ahead and fold her up. We're actually just gonna fold her once in this one, and we're gonna flour dust the outside, and let's go ahead and roll her through again. All right, this time I'm gonna fold it a couple of times. Make sure our outside is dusted. We're good. We're gonna send her through this way this time. Oh, beautiful. All right, so pasta sheet number 2, first time through. And so let's go ahead and dust. And this time when we're rolling out, so we're gonna go ahead and change our setting to the next one down, and change that to, and let's go ahead and roll her out. And this time we're not gonna do any folding. We are just going to let it go through. Beautiful. So there is our first sheet of pasta for that level. We're only going to run it through this one once. Okay. We've got our dusting on the outside of this one. And let's go ahead. All right. And we're going to bring this down one more level. Now, the level that you bring it down to is all going to determine how thick or thin you want your pasta to be. I don't want mine super thin, so we're just going to do 3 of them here. And there is our first final sheet of pasta, and as you can see, you can kind of see through and see my hands there through the pasta. And this one is going to be much longer, because this is a longer sheet that we have here. We made this one longer. And make sure that you're dusted with flour. Let's go ahead and put this pasta through the roller. And we can let her hang there as we bring out the pasta from here. Beautiful, guys. All right, so now we're gonna cut these to the length we want them, and then we're gonna put them through the cutter. So we switched sides of the counter, guys, here so that we can start cutting the pasta. And we are just gonna run it through the cutter. And out comes our pasta. As it's coming out, you might want to flour it. It just depends on how quickly you're going to use it. But you want to make sure that if there's not enough flour on the outside that you're separating those noodles so they don't stick together. Man, I need to oil my pasta cutter, huh? So we've got our pot of water boiling here. You want to make sure that when you put your water on to boil that you're salting it. When you salt your pasta water, it means that your pasta is going to absorb some of that salt. So when you add it to your sauce that you've already made, you're not losing the flavor of your sauce. You don't have to retest the seasoning in your sauce or add more salt because the salt is in the pasta. So we're just going to add this fresh pasta to the water. And just like with the noodles that we cooked previously, you want to watch them to see when they're floating. They only want to cook for a few minutes because this is fresh pasta and you don't want to overcook it. You want to make sure that you're cooking it to that al dente. See some of our pasta floating on the surface here. So we're just going to give this a quick stir. Okay, so we're going to pull this first batch out and put it in our serving bowl. And go ahead and put our next batch in. And if you don't have one of these specific pasta strainers, don't worry about it. You can use a pasta serving spoon. You can use a fork. It'll take a little while with a fork, but you can use a fork. Whatever you have available, you can use. I like to use this because I don't want to cook all of my pasta all at the same time in the water. I don't want to risk it sticking together or having any uneven cook. So I use this when I'm doing fresh pasta. Otherwise, I just use a colander. So our pasta's done. Our pesto's done. Time to put it all together, guys. We're just going to add our pesto sauce here into our pasta. Make sure that we get it all in there, and we are going to mix this around. You may want to use a fork for this because you want to make sure that you get it all over everything. And it's going to be thick. Now, of course, if you make more pasta, you don't want it so covered in the pesto. You just want it lightly over the pesto. It's not going to be thick like this. But here is our pasta with pesto, guys. Our pasta with pesto sauce. Let's do a taste test for good measure. Messy, but delicious. I hope that you enjoyed cooking this with me as much as I enjoyed showing you how to make it. Until next week, have a great week, guys.